Good morning, everyone. Before we begin today's chapter, let me ask you a question. Was India always ruled by the same king? Take a few answers. No. India was ruled by many different kingdoms and rulers over time. To understand this, historians divide Indian history into three periods. Ancient period, medieval period, modern period. Today, we are going to study the medieval period. The word medieval means Middle Ages or the period between the ancient and modern ages. In India, it is generally considered to be from the 11th to the 17th century. During this period, many new rulers came to India. Some came as invaders, while others established powerful kingdoms and empire. New dynasties rose, old kingdoms declined, famous battles were fought, and India's political map changed again and again. That is why our chapter is called Reshaping India's Political Map. Today, we will understand how the Delhi Sultanate, the Vijayanagara Empire, the Mughals, and many regional kingdoms changed the history of India. Children, after Muhammad Ghori defeated Prithviraj Chauhan in the Second Battle of Tarain, 1192, he did not stay in India. Instead, he returned to Afghanistan and left his trusted general, Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, in charge. After Muhammad Ghori's death in 1206, Aibak became the ruler of Delhi and founded the Delhi Sultanate. First, Mamluk, slave, dynasty. The first dynasty was the Mamluk or slave dynasty. It was founded by Qutb-ud-Din Aibak. Later, rulers like Iltutmish, Razia Sultan, and Balban strengthened the Sultanate. However, after Balban's death, the rulers became weak, creating an opportunity for another dynasty to take over. Second, Khalji dynasty. Then came the Khalji dynasty. Jalal-ud-Din Khalji became the new Sultan. But his own nephew, Alauddin Khalji, wanted the throne. He killed Jalal-ud-Din and became Sultan. Alauddin was a powerful ruler who expanded the empire, defeated Mongol invasions, and sent Malik Kafur on campaigns in South India. Third, Tughlaq dynasty. After the Khalji rulers became weak, Ghiyas-ud-Din Tughlaq founded the Tughlaq dynasty. His son, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, introduced many ambitious schemes like shifting the capital to Daulatabad and introducing token currency. However, most of these plans failed, leading to unrest and rebellions. Fourth, Sayyid dynasty. Later, in 1398, Timur invaded Delhi, causing great destruction. After the Tughlaq dynasty weakened, Khizr Khan established the Sayyid dynasty. The Sayyid rulers controlled only a small part of the empire and were not very powerful. Fifth, Lodi dynasty. After the Sayyids, Balul Lodi founded the Lodi dynasty. The last ruler was Ibrahim Lodi. In 1526, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi in the First Battle of Panipat. This ended the Delhi Sultanate and marked the beginning of the Mughal Empire. Children, we have already learned that the Delhi Sultanate ended in 1526. But what happened after that? Did India remain without a ruler? No. A new empire began, the Mughal Empire. Babur, founder of the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire was founded by Babur. He came from Central Asia and wanted to establish his rule in India. At that time, Ibrahim Lodi was the last ruler of the Delhi Sultanate. In 1526, Babur and Ibrahim Lodi fought the first battle of Panipat. Babur used gunpowder and cannons, which gave him a great advantage. He defeated and killed Ibrahim Lodi. Result, the Delhi Sultanate ended, and the Mughal Empire began. After Babur's death, his son Humayun became the emperor. However, he faced many difficulties. He lost his kingdom to Sher Shah Suri and had to leave India. After some years, with the help of the Persian ruler, Humayun regained his throne. But soon after, he died in an accident. After Humayun's death, his son Akbar became emperor at a very young age. He is remembered as one of the greatest Mughal rulers. Akbar expanded the Mughal Empire and made it stronger. He followed the policy of Sul-i-Kul, which means peace and respect for all religions. He appointed Hindus and non-Muslims to important government posts. He also introduced the Mansabdari system, divided the empire into 12 subas, and Raja Todar Mal improved the land revenue system. Akbar was also a great patron of art, literature, painting, and architecture. He established a translation department where books like the Mahabharata, Ramayana, Bhagavad Gita, and Panchtantra were translated into Persian. He also built Fatehpur Sikari and the famous Buland Darwaja. After Akbar came Jahangir. He continued to support art and painting. During his reign, Mughal culture and architecture continued to flourish. After Jahangir came Shah Jahan. He is famous for building beautiful monuments such as the Taj Mahal and the Red Fort. His reign is considered the golden age of Mughal architecture. When Shah Jahan fell ill in 1657, a war of succession began among his sons. Aurangzeb defeated his elder brother Dara Shikoh, imprisoned his father Shah Jahan in Agra fort, and became emperor in 1658. Aurangzeb took the title, Alamgir, meaning, conqueror of the world. He expanded the Mughal empire to its greatest extent and spent many years fighting in the Deccan. He reintroduced the jizya tax on non-Muslims and followed strict religious policies. His long wars and frequent rebellions weakened the empire. After Aurangzeb's death in 1707, the Mughal empire gradually declined. So children, the Mughal empire began with Babur, grew stronger under Akbar, reached its greatest size under Aurangzeb, and then slowly declined after his death. The Mughals made important contributions to administration, art, architecture, literature, and culture, which still influence India today. Children, the Mughal empire became very large and powerful. But do you think everyone accepted Mughal rule peacefully? No. Many kingdoms, tribal groups, and local communities fought bravely to protect their land, freedom, and traditions. Let's learn about them. The first group was the Jats. They were mainly farmers. They revolted against some Mughal officials because of heavy taxes and unfair treatment. Many tribal communities such as the Bhils, Gonds, Santhals, and Koks also resisted Mughal expansion. Some areas came under Mughal rule, but many tribal groups continued to remain independent. One of the bravest rulers was Rani Durgavati, the queen of the Gadha kingdom. In 1564, Akbar's army attacked her kingdom. She fought courageously to defend her people. Even when defeat seemed certain, she chose death rather than surrender. Today, she is remembered as a symbol of courage and bravery. Now let's move to the Rajputs. After the Khalji invasions, they rebuilt their kingdoms. Two important Rajput states were Mewar and Marwar. Rana Sanga fought against Babur in the Battle of Khamwa in 1527 but was defeated. Later, Maharana Pratap became one of the greatest Rajput rulers. He refused to accept Mughal rule and fought Akbar in the Battle of Haldighati in 1576. Although he did not win the battle, he continued fighting through guerrilla warfare and never gave up. Some Rajput rulers became allies of the Mughals, while others continued to resist. In the northeast, the Ahoms came from Myanmar and settled in the Brahmaputra Valley during the 13th century. They established the Ahom kingdom. The Mughals tried many times to conquer them but failed. In 1671, the Ahoms, led by Lachit Bophukan, defeated the Mughal army in the famous Battle of Sareghat. Because of this victory, the Ahom kingdom remained independent. Children, now let's learn about the rise of the Sikhs. Sikhism was founded by Guru Nanak in the 15th century. He believed in one God, Ek Onkar, and taught people to live with equality, honesty, kindness, and compassion. He also taught that all people are equal, regardless of their caste or religion. After Guru Nanak, 9 more gurus guided the Sikh community. During the Mughal period, the Sikhs faced many challenges. Guru Arjan, the 5th Sikh Guru, was executed during the reign of Jahangir. This became an important turning point in Sikh history. After this, Guru Hargobind realized that the Sikh community also needed to protect itself. So, besides spreading spiritual teachings, he organized a Sikh army for defense. Later, Guru Tegh Bahadur sacrificed his life to protect religious freedom and the rights of people to follow their own faith. His sacrifice is remembered with great respect. Finally, in 1699, Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Sikh Guru, founded the Khalsa. The Khalsa united the Sikhs and encouraged them to be brave, disciplined, and ready to defend justice and their religion. As the Mughal Empire became weaker, the Sikhs became stronger. Different Sikh groups, called Sikh confederacies, misls, emerged in Punjab. Later, Maharaja Ranjit Singh united these confederacies and established a powerful Sikh empire in northwestern India. His empire remained strong until the mid-19th century. Children, now we know about the rulers and the kingdoms. But have you ever wondered how such a large empire was managed? Was the Sultan doing everything alone? No. To run such a vast empire, the Sultan needed a proper administrative system with many officers and ministers. The Sultan was the head of the government and the army. However, he was assisted by a council of ministers who helped him in different areas like finance, justice, military affairs, and administration. One of the most important features of the Delhi Sultanate was the Ikta system. Under this system, the Sultan gave land, called an Ikta, to officials known as Iqtadars. The Iqtadars had important responsibilities. They collected taxes, maintained law and order, and looked after their areas. They also had to provide soldiers to the Sultan whenever needed. The taxes collected through the Ikta system were used to run the government and maintain the army. Children, Akbar was not only a great conqueror but also a good administrator. He made the Mughal government stronger and more organized. He divided his empire into 12 provinces, called Subas, so that each area could be managed properly. Akbar also introduced the Mansabdari system. Under this system, officials called Mansabdars were given ranks according to their duties. Instead of salaries, they received Jagirs, which were land grants. Another important officer was Raja Todar Mal, who improved the land revenue system by measuring land and fixing fair taxes. Akbar believed in Sulh-i-Kul, which means peace and respect for all religions. He also appointed Hindus and non-Muslims to important government posts. Because of these reforms, Akbar's administration became strong and well organized. Children, till now we have learnt about kings, battles, and empire. But have you ever wondered how ordinary people lived during this period? Let's find out. Most people were farmers, so agriculture was their main occupation. They grew crops like rice, wheat, cotton, sugarcane, and spices. To improve farming, they used wells, canals, tanks, and step wells for irrigation. Trade was also very important. India traded with many countries. Merchants exported textiles, spices, handicrafts, and precious stones, while goods like horses and silk were imported. They also used the hundi system, which was like a money slip to transfer money safely without carrying cash. Farmers had to pay land revenue, taxes, to the rulers. Sometimes these taxes were very high, making life difficult for many peasants. Temples were not only places of worship. They were also centers of education, art, music, dance, culture, and trade. They played an important role in people's daily lives.